Hi guys, welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to watch America Compared. Why do Americans get treated so badly compared to people from other countries? Now, is this entirely true? Because I think in some areas, America does really well. Like when I used to work for the CMA, I Googled how much a paralegal, which is what my job title was, at the competition regulator in the US would earn, and it was more than double what I made here in the UK. So I think in terms of salaries, the US, I probably would be willing to bet, beats most of Europe, if not all of Europe, in terms of the average salary, like for like. But I think in other areas, perhaps like maybe education, the cost of a good education, I think probably we here in Europe probably beat the States, just because I think to attend an Ivy League college, you're looking at something in the realm of, is it like $50,000 per year in just fees alone? So I think you got to pay for accommodation on top of that. I'm not sure, but I think it's a huge amount. Healthcare is another one. I think usually most people have a private healthcare plan in the States. Is there free Medicare or something? I think there is something you can get in the States, but it's not like it is here in the UK, where it's free at the point of use and you pay for it through your taxes. So this video should be a really interesting one, and let me know, guys, what your thoughts are in the comments. If you do think, you guys that live in the States have it harder than we do here in Europe and in other parts of the world. It's going to be an interesting video.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help me make more content like this, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. I'm going to say something that will probably offend many of my viewers. Let me preface this by saying that I, as an American, include myself in the following statement. Americans are quite possibly the most willfully ignorant people on the face of the planet.
Really?
We have access to the sum total of all human knowledge, yet our understanding of the world rarely extends beyond our own country. And even then, the majority of Americans believe in a vision of the country that does not actually exist. It's not that we're stupid, we just tend to blindly accept that the US is the greatest place on Earth, and therefore don't see any reason to educate ourselves about the realities of the rest of the world. In this episode, we're going to pull back the curtain on how America actually compares to other countries, and consider why the richest country on Earth fails to treat its people with dignity and fairness. I'm going to provide a list of important topics, then for each item we'll compare the American experience with that of citizens from other nations. Hopefully by providing a side-by-side comparison, you'll be able to see the stark contrast between how most Americans see their country and how it really stacks up against the competition. To give you an idea of just how—
Do you know what I think it is? I think a lot of Americans don't leave the country because it's so big. You can get a really good vacation while staying in America. So by not leaving, you don't get to see how people live in other places.
How skewed the American perception of our country really is, let's start with a pretty shocking example. Compensation for what are considered low-skill jobs. We'll take the quintessential American company, McDonald's. McDonald's is the world's largest restaurant chain by revenue. It operates in over 100 countries and serves over 69 million customers every day.
Wow.
As of 2018, McDonald's was the second largest private employer, with 1.7 million employees, behind
way.
Walmart's 2.3 million. How many times have you heard someone refer to McDonald's jobs or workers in a derogatory manner? For some reason, people who work at McDonald's are seen as inferior or lazy or have any number of other unfair and unkind assessments leveled at them. This probably stems from the old notion of flipping burgers being a job anyone can perform. But the animosity towards low-wage workers has grown significantly in the past few decades. And in America, McDonald's workers really do suffer a low wage. As of 2020, the average crew member at McDonald's makes $9 per hour. The average McDonald's cashier makes $8 per hour. The federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.25, a rate which has not been raised in over a decade, and which should not be considered a reasonable wage for any position, considering the fact that a full-time minimum wage worker cannot afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment anywhere in the United States, and can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment in over 95% of US counties.
Oh my God.
Now, the all-too-common response to data like this is something like, well, yeah, it's not a hard job, you should just find a better one. Here's a simple question. Should any job, regardless of technical skill required, pay workers so little that they cannot afford to rent even the smallest place to live?
That is a very good question, and I think it shouldn't be that way. I think, it's a job is a job at the end of the day. Not everybody is going to become a software programmer. I think $8 an hour is unacceptable.
Not to mention other necessities like utilities, food, and medicine. Absolutely not. That is inhumane and cruel, especially coming from the second largest employer in the richest country on the planet. Other notable objections include, McDonald's has to make a profit. If they pay their workers more, they might go out of business. First of all, if you can't pay your workers a fair wage,
Then
your
you're not
company
running a
should not be in business.
Yeah, you're
End
not
of
running a
story.
proper business.
But again, McDonald's is not struggling to make ends meet. In 2019, McDonald's raked in $21 billion in revenue. But no
How much
matter how
profit, though?
obvious the exploitation of low-wage workers, Americans are hell-bent on praising the very companies doing the exploiting. Take this article on Reader's Digest, for example. It's titled, "This is what McDonald's workers really get paid." You see that and think, oh, nice, finally some news showing how poorly these workers are compensated. Then you scroll down and nope, they're actually praising McDonald's, saying things like, the food chain is also great for paying their workers fairly, and McDonald's is one of the highest paying fast food chains in the United States. This level of sycophancy is insane. If $8 or $9 an hour is some of the highest pay in the industry, that doesn't indicate that McDonald's is paying fairly. It indicates that a massive chunk of the population is being paid poverty wages.
Because I mean, $9 an hour, if you're working 40 hours a week, that's $360 a week. So per month, that is, so 300 times 4 is 1,200. 60 times 4 is 240. So you're earning $1,440 a month. You just can't really live on that, can you? Like, at least alone. I guess if there's two of you earning that, even if there's two of you, that's still going to be quite tight, isn't it?
This is where taking an international perspective is so critical. If all you see is feel-good stories about how well McDonald's workers are paid, you'll never know how badly American workers are actually being treated. Let's take the same company, the same position, but in a different country. Here's a McDonald's in Denmark. The average McDonald's worker in Denmark, for doing the same low-skill job, makes $22 per hour.
What?
Well, hold on, you hear Reader's Digest scream from across the Atlantic. McDonald's workers in America get paid vacation days after just a year of work. Wow, enticing. In Denmark, when you're hired at McDonald's, not only are you making nearly 3 times what you would make in an American Mickey D's, you also instantly have access to a full year of paid family leave and a pension.
My
No
God,
slaving away for a
what?
year to prove your value to the company. You're hired and you're treated fairly. Simple as that. McDonald's can afford to compensate all their workers like this, but they won't, because US laws allow them to exploit American workers to the point where they're basically slaves.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not pushed to do it, they're not going to do it, are they? They're going to give the money to the shareholders.
Earning the bare minimum to survive, paying all of their income and often going into debt just to pay rent, and having no way to escape this vicious cycle because they're working such long hours. This is the case across all of America's low-wage jobs, of which there are many. The plight of the low-wage worker is incredibly dire, and all you have to do to understand that is look at how those same workers are treated in other wealthy countries. Let's move on to another topic, work-life balance. Fair wages are definitely part of this equation. If you're paid fairly, you don't need to work a second job, which will free up your time to be spent elsewhere. But we're going to focus on
friends.
other metrics, specifically the length of the work week, vacation time, and parental leave. Let's start with the US. Most Americans would say that 40 hours per week is full-time. That seems to be
Yeah,
the general
sounds about
consensus.
right. Yeah.
But, in keeping with the country's exploitative labor practices, the hilariously named Fair Labor Standards Act does not actually define what qualifies as full-time. That's left up to the employer. Okay, why does this matter? Well, think of your past part-time jobs. Did you get any benefits? Healthcare, 401k? Probably not. Most benefits, when they're offered at all, are reserved for full-time employees. Companies don't want to provide benefits because they affect their bottom line. America is all about cutting costs, and providing workers with fair compensation is a cost. So, imagine you apply for a full-time job at Best Buy. You're offered the job, but they tell you they only have part-time positions, but they can give you almost full-time. They make it sound like they're doing
So what they're doing is you'll basically work part-time, but you'll actually be working full-time hours, but you get none of the benefits. I see. Do any of you guys, are any of you guys in that current situation where you're basically a full-time employee, but you're not getting any sort of medical, dental, that kind of stuff?
doing you a favor, offering you more hours than normal part-time. But this is just another example of employers exploiting their workers. If you work 37 hours per week, you're essentially a full-time
Full-time
employee,
worker,
but they
yeah.
don't have to provide you any sort of benefits. No healthcare, no vacation, nothing. This is a common practice. Companies will hire people, but keep them just below the threshold for full-time to avoid providing fair compensation. I've seen it happen. I used to work at Best Buy and they would do it all the time. And that's just the companies who are still trying to appear generous. Others will simply not offer benefits at all, or set their full-time positions at 50 or 60 hours per week. Sales positions are notorious for this. They'll often say, well, we expect you to work 40 hours, but all the top sellers are working 60 to 70 hours per week. This is coercion. They're trying to pressure you into working more hours to benefit them, and the compensation is never what they claim it will be. By allowing employers to define full-time work, American workers are held captive by corporations.
Man, this is just scary, and I think things are going to get even worse. I read an article the other day. Apparently, Shopify are allegedly firing loads of customer service people and replacing them with like ChatGPT wrapped up in some kind of like a virtual assistant type thing. So I think you're going to see a lot more like jobs getting lost as well. Yeah, the world, it's like the next 10 years are going to be quite interesting.
Forced to either work absurd hours to qualify for full-time benefits or find a second job to help cover the cost of things like health insurance. Both of these options lead to a terrible work-life balance, and as real wages have decreased and benefits have been offered less and less over the years, huge numbers of American workers have developed an unhealthy work-life balance. For example, in 1960, when workers had real bargaining power, only 20% of American women worked. Today, 70% of children live in households where both parents are working full-time. Where does all this lead?
Right?
As of 2020, over 85% of American men and 66% of women work more than 40 hours per week. We work 137 more hours per year than Japanese workers, 260 more than the British, and 499 more hours per year than the French.
I thought the Japanese worked really long overtime. It's actually really shocking to hear that Americans work more than the Japanese, because you hear all these stories, right, about Japanese people having to like sleep at their desk and stuff like that.
Why do other countries have such a better balance? Because many of them have laws that cap the length of the full-time work week. Companies are required to pay their workers fairly and allow enough time off for employees to maintain a healthy work-life balance. That's not the case in the US. Vacation time is a similar story. Whereas many other countries mandate that employers provide paid vacation and sick days, the US does not. In every industrialized nation, workers get more paid vacation days and holidays than in the US. Here's a depressing graph to illustrate just how poorly we treat our workers.
Oh my God, this is crazy. I mean, really? 0? This can't be right, can it?
France 31, Spain 34, Austria 38, America 0. 0 paid vacation days, 0 paid holidays.
What?
And remember, these are the mandated figures. Every Austrian worker gets a minimum of 38 paid days off per year. Even in the worst possible employment situation, they'd still get 38 paid days off. In the US, many workers are lucky to get Christmas or Thanksgiving off at all. And the odds that it's a paid holiday? Next to 0. Let's move on to our final comparison, paid parental leave. Many Americans aren't even aware.
Americans that are watching this, like, do you feel like you work too much? Are you tired? Like, do you feel like you don't get enough time off? Like, let me know in the comments, if you've ever had like burnout or anything like that. If you feel kind of like trapped in your current situation, let me know. I'd love to read some of your experiences.
Where this is a thing, so let me explain.
Cute baby.
When an employee of a company has a child, sometimes they're offered parental leave, a period of time where they can stay home from work to bond with and take care of their new baby. This greatly benefits the employee, the child, and in the long run, the company, because the employee will be happier, less stressed, and more loyal to the company.
Of course. Makes
Offering
sense.
paid parental leave doesn't benefit corporations in the short term. And if there's one thing that encapsulates the American business philosophy, it's short-term gains over all else. So it won't surprise you to learn that the US is the only industrialized nation on the planet that does not mandate some amount of paid parental leave. This may be shocking to my American viewers because being able to get paid to spend time with your newborn child sounds like an impossible dream in our dystopian labor market. And honestly, it probably is impossible in our current America. We're so invested in self-destructive capitalism that even suggesting the possibility of paid parental leave would put US politicians out of a job. That's not the case in the rest of the industrialized world.
Is that unpopular?
In fact, every other OECD nation, and even in many third world countries, new parents are guaranteed at least several weeks of leave. Let's take a look at a few of them. Ethiopia, a country with an annual gross national income of under $900 per person, offers 90 days of leave with 100% pay. Madagascar, 14 weeks at 100%. Afghanistan, 90 days. Denmark, 52 weeks. Norway, 56 weeks. France, 16 weeks at 100% pay for your first child, up to 26 weeks for your third, on top of 104 unpaid weeks. Lithuania, 52 weeks at 100%, plus an additional 52 weeks at 80%. Again, the United States does not mandate a single day of paid parental leave, even for the mother. And
I mean, you guys watching this from the States, you must want some kind of parental leave. I think it's time to start putting in leaders who advocate stuff like this, because ultimately, I think you guys have the power. Like, the people have the power, right? If you put in politicians that, say that they will give you this sort of stuff, put them in and you'll get it.
the father is never considered. This means that workers in America have to choose to either pay the exorbitant cost of childcare or have one parent quit their job in order to take care of the child. These are both bad options, which often lead to economic precarity.
Yeah,
but that doesn't matter to the companies
right?
employing American workers. Profit is the only thing that matters. Hopefully, seeing these labor practices compared like this has made it clear that not only is the US not living up to its claim to being the greatest nation on earth, but also that it consistently ranks poorly and often dead last in terms of labor metrics. Why is it that the wealthiest, most powerful nation on earth can't pay their workers a fair wage, or provide healthcare, vacation time, or paid parental leave? You should realize by now that it's not that they can't, it's that they won't. Everything in America is beholden to the almighty dollar. Profit is the only motivator. If an action does not produce a greater profit, it will not be considered. Over the last few decades, Americans have watched as our livelihoods, our quality of life, and our dignity have all been stripped away by those who already make obscene amounts of money. Those in power say we're all in this together, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The ultra-wealthy and the world's largest corporations rely on Americans remaining ignorant. They rely on us accepting the lie that America is the greatest nation on earth, that it couldn't possibly get any better. All you have to do to shatter that lie is to take a look around the world. Other nations take care of their citizens. Even impoverished nations, or nations that we've bombed into oblivion, take better care of their people than the US does.
I mean, that stat about Ethiopia giving 90 days of parental leave, and they only get like $900 per person in terms of like a GDP. Come on, the US could easily give at least, 6 months parental leave.
American workers need to relearn the language of class struggle and work together to break the wheel of the capitalist machine. If we want to claim that the United States is the greatest place on earth, we need to make it that way.
Wow, that was brilliant. So much food for thought. I think there are a lot of things that America does super well, innovation, technology, you've got some of the best doctors in the world. There's so much opportunity I think you can have in the States, but I think we've got to a point now where corporate greed is out of control. I think it's just gone well beyond the levels that we can sustain a population on, like a happy population. I think, things like no paid vacation, things like no parental leave, things like paying a full-time worker $8-9 an hour. I just don't see how these things are allowed, really. How they in 2023 is the norm. Like here in the UK, I think a McDonald's employee makes about £9 or £10 an hour, which is probably $12 or $13 an hour. And from the research I've done, the UK is cheaper to live than the US on average, at least from my findings. So I think, let me know what you guys think in the comments, especially those who live in the States, have been in the States for a long time. Do you agree with a lot of what was said in the video? Do you disagree? Would love to have some conversations. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.